stand up strong. All my girls, so if you're with me, it's right on with me. There ain't nothing like it. The black girl magic, black girl magic.
What's going on, tribe? My name is Nicole.
And my name is Kia, and we are the co-founders of Glamourina.
Yep, Glamourina is an inclusive women's lifestyle brand specializing in culturally inspired activewear, intentionally designed to complement all complexions and body types. Our mission is to provide a safe space in health and wellness where every body belongs.
That's right. And welcome to Behind Glamourina, Moms on a Mission podcast, where we discuss how we balance being successful Black female entrepreneurs, working our 9-to-5 jobs, raising our daughters, self-care, and everything in between.
Yep. And so if you've been tapping in all season or any other episodes this season, we always do a mental health check-in just to check on each other's, check on you guys, see how you're doing, and just to remind you to do your own mental health check-in. So this week, Kia, we are in our finale episode. How are you feeling this week?
Yay. I just want to give us a round of applause.
Yes, we did it.
We did it. Our first season of starting a podcast. So in terms of mentally, I feel pretty good about that. I feel proud of, we've tried a couple of new things with the podcast and the sister circle that we started this year. I feel like every year we continue to learn and grow as business owners. Yep. So just, business wise, I feel good. I feel positive in that aspect. And I mean, personally, I'm doing okay too. It's always the same in terms of sleep, but I'm working on it. I am definitely working on it. I'm actually trying to make a doctor's appointment and just kind of figure out what I can do that's going to help me with my sleep. But outside of that, I'm doing okay. Yeah. How about you, Nicole? How's your mental health?
I'm good. I don't think I knew that you had an issue with sleep.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm becoming an insomniac. I really
a lot of people struggle with that, though. Yeah, I'm good. I'm actually getting excited. So much is going on in life. Just we manage so much, right? Personally, professionally, entrepreneur wise. So I'm trying to get to a place where I'm like, celebrate the wins, right? So just looking at, as we, outline this episode, looking at the analytics and just looking at the success of what we've done, you know what I mean? And we're going to get into that a little bit today, but I'm doing good. I'm doing overall pretty good. No stress, no anxiety. So that's a good thing. So if you guys are listening or watching on YouTube, let us know in the comment section, how are you feeling today? As you listen to this, how are you feeling? How's your mental health?
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and dive into. So today's episode is, like we said, the final episode in season 1 of our very first podcast. So for those who may be listening for the first time and aren't familiar with us, Kia and I have been running Glamourina Activewear for over 7 years now. And we're always looking for ways to improve and expand our business. And because of who we are as moms and Black women and entrepreneurs has been such a big part of our success running the activewear brand. We thought launching a podcast would be a great way to get up close and personal with our current tribe, our current audience, and then build a new one too at the same time. So that's what we decided to do. We started brainstorming at the end of 2022. And then February 2023, we launched our very first episode of the podcast.
Yay. I know. I'm so excited. So we wanted to recap the season today and also kind of discuss, how we got started with this podcast and some of the things that we've learned. Like Nicole mentioned, we started brainstorming last year, and then I think we recorded our first episode, or we recorded a few episodes first, and then launched in February. So we definitely want to kind of dive into a few things that we've learned. We had no prior experience in the podcast world before launching Behind Glamourina. We didn't have any prior experience in terms of really running a business before starting Glamourina. So that just goes to show anyone that's listening that if you have an idea and you want to see it, come through, you go for it. It doesn't matter if you don't have the experience, if you don't, if you've never done it before, that's okay. You can learn along the way. So, there's so many people out here that want to start their own podcast. So like we mentioned earlier, we just want to kind of give you a little bit of our experience and obviously some of the things that we've learned so far.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go into, some steps that Shopify identifies of how you can start your own podcast. And we love using Shopify. That's the platform that we use for Glamourina. Shout out to Shopify. The first thing you want to do is when you're thinking about starting your podcast is to kind of think of a theme. You really want to stress test your idea by writing it out. You really want to write out several episodes ahead of time and just include, what you want to discuss, who would you want to interview, and if your podcast will even include interviews. So when we came together, that's what we did. We sat down and brainstormed first, what's going to be the theme for us. And I feel like for us in starting this podcast, creating the theme really wasn't that hard because we've always kind of had this idea of moms on a mission. We've been rolling with that since day one. And we knew that we wanted our podcast to be more of a conversation, I think, that Nicole and I could have with our audience that wasn't about, our clothing all the time. We do mention it, all the time at the ends of every episode, but we really wanted our podcast to just be an opportunity to kind of go a little bit behind the scenes to get our opinion as business owners on different social topics that are happening in the world. And so that's the very first thing that we did is just kind of sit down, really solidify our theme, and then start writing out some of the episodes. And again, figuring out if we want to do interviews. We have one interview scheduled for this season, and that episode is going to come. That episode actually already launched on the 17th, but that's kind of how we got started.
Yeah, definitely. And like Kia said, it was easy for us to identify a theme because we already had a brand and we already had like a purpose and mission statement. And the podcast was just an extension of that. But for anyone who maybe is just starting from complete scratch, definitely understand your purpose first. With any business though, right? Like understand your purpose, like who you're targeting. That's going to like be the foundation for anything you do, whether it's a business, like a fashion business like we have, or the podcast business, which we're new to. So I like that. The next thing that Shopify mentions is creating your brand, your podcast brand. So making sure you have a name, understanding your category. So it's a whole business, right? The category is going to show you who you're competing against, what other podcasts you're competing against, if it's like educational for entertainment. And I think we have a little bit of both. We have a little bit of entertainment in there, a little bit of like health awareness. So education/entertainment. And like Kia said, with the name, it was easy to come up with the name because it's already what we do. It's, It's behind Glamourina, behind our business. And we're moms on a mission. That's what we've been doing since day one. That's what we're going to continue to do is be moms who are on a mission to reach success in business. So it was pretty easy for us, but just think about that in episode descriptions and cover art, just branding your podcast. So we already have a brand with Glamourina. We already have color scheme and fonts and stuff like that. So the podcast is like I said earlier, it's an extension. So that was easy too, but just making sure we had that cover art, a picture of Key and I, like the colors, the name of the podcast. That way, when you're posting on different platforms, everything is consistent. So just make sure that you have that information outlined first. And then the descriptions, because we have, like Kia said, planned out the episodes in advance. When we're going in to post on like Spotify or YouTube, all we have to do is copy and paste the information from our outline in the description because we already have it. So just planning things out is super, super important.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. Creating your podcast brand, like you mentioned earlier, it was a little easier for us because we already had a brand. Yep. But for anyone that might not have a brand already and is just now starting and is starting with the podcast, you have to think of it as if it's a clothing line, as if it's, almost like your own little business. Everything has to be cohesive in terms of the color scheme and just everything needs to flow. So if you have your podcast, if you have a Facebook page and social media where you're going to be using those platforms to help promote your podcast, everything needs to look cohesive and clean. Don't have, pink and green in one area of your podcast and you got a totally different logo or different color scheme, on your Instagram. Everything should be cohesive and streamlined. So that's very, very important. And then, of course, structuring and planning and getting prepared before you just jump right into it. Yeah. I think that's important because as we have seen, we had several episodes planned, even pre-recorded, but life happens. And some of our recording dates were canceled or pushed back, just for whatever reasons. And then you find yourself like scrambling. Oh my gosh, we have to get a recording in before the date. If you're going to do a once a week podcast. So as much planning as you can beforehand and pre-recording is great. And along with the recording, you really have to figure out what kind of equipment that you're going to be using. So you want to kind of research and see, when we first started, I was just like, all I knew is what I've seen in terms of what people recording. I knew you needed a mic. I've seen people with like the headphones. I didn't understand why the headphones, not just the mic, until we started. And then I get it. I can hear myself better and it just makes sense. And how, the equipment, is that going to work with what you already have? I had bought this mic and the headphones. So it was like a package that we got, I think off of Amazon. We read lots of reviews to try to get the right stuff. But I realized that the mic did not plug into my laptop. So then you have to find, any other type of equipment. So everything flows before you start. Yeah. So please be sure when you start your podcast, you got your theme, you got some episodes, you're going to do interviews. What's your podcast going to be about, your brand, and then just making sure you have the right equipment that matches your laptop or computer desktop.
And like he had said, test it out, because before we didn't announce a date of the podcast until we had tested out the equipment, filmed a test episode, because you're right, it's people don't know, and I hope anybody who may have clicked on this because they're searching how to start their own podcast this year, it's important to test it out, because you get all excited, you start telling people about it, but then you test or you film and your audio didn't record properly, or and then you thought you had this episode and it's you got to do it again. So, and then time is important. So test everything out first, like outline your episodes, film a test run before you start promoting, before you start telling people what's going to come out on this day, for sure.
I love that.
Yeah. And so then next is, recording, editing, and hosting. So like we said, you have a schedule, try to schedule your recordings before, within enough time to be able to edit. So for us, we decided to record in Zoom because we aren't local to, we're about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from each other. So we can't do this in person this season, at least. So we decided on Zoom. The camera quality is decent for our video portion for YouTube. We tested out the audio so we can do the audio for the other platforms. And so we just decided on this, this is what we have now. We'll upgrade eventually. And then from there, the editing software. So I already had Premiere Pro for other editing stuff. It costs money, but there are free editing software like Final Cut Pro and other things like that. So just look into different softwares for recording and editing, what fits your budget, what looks the best or sounds the best. And just try to map out that too. And then hosting. So because we had no experience with launching a podcast, we didn't really know how to get it on a platform. Like, did you have to pay money? How do you get it on all platforms? And so we decided on Shopify. I keep saying Shopify, Spotify. Because Spotify has a platform where you can kind of link to you can upload it to one platform and then it goes to multiple platforms. So it's just really easy. So do the research in like what platforms you want to host your podcast on. And then eventually we launched on Apple Podcasts, which it costs money. It's a separate thing. It's not free, but you get a wider audience because we know Apple is just a huge platform. So think about how you're going to edit, where you're going to host. That's all super, super important, and just what tools you'll need to like create thumbnails, create intros, outros, music. It's so much involved in the actual editing and like execution of the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that you're mentioning, that some of the software, I'm sure people know, it may cost some money. So thinking about your budget as well when you're first starting your podcast, like how much money do I want to put into this? Because it could take, a little while before, especially if you're doing it on YouTube, right? Or any platform, it could take a little while to start getting any type of,
return.
Profit from it. Yeah, any type of return. So think about, because the equipment costs money, depending on how many people. If it's just going to be you, obviously you only need, one mic, one headset, what have you. But if it's multiple people on your podcast, you have to really think about that. Everybody needs equipment, possibly the same equipment. Nicole and I decided to get the same. We ordered the same stuff, had it shipped to each other's homes because I don't want to have one set, one mic and stuff, and it just doesn't flow and you have something totally different. So I think consider your budget and that the things cost money, the software. Do you know how to edit? I didn't know how to edit. I still don't really know how to edit. So I'm lucky in a sense that I have a business partner that knows how to do that. But again, if it's just you and you don't have any editing experience, obviously there's lots of YouTube videos and stuff. So I feel like you need a couple of months before you're actually going to launch your podcast to just get everything in place. It's not that hard. There's lots of YouTube videos out there to help you with finding the equipment, finding the software. It's just really a matter of like preparation and planning before you launch. Because sometimes we get excited about stuff and then we start telling people. And I like that you mentioned that because that's just so important. Don't tell people what you're doing until you're ready.
And you have to be, honestly, all of that you mentioned is important, but another key piece is dedication and consistency, right?
Yeah.
Because you have this great idea. Sometimes people get excited. I'm guilty of it sometimes. And then you don't execute on it because you kind of
overextend yourself a little.
You overextended yourself and you underestimated what it was going to take to do it.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned with editing, initially, I didn't know, like I edit videos already, but I didn't know exactly the flow or how long it would take to edit, right? So test that out too. So you know if it's realistic. If you want to film every week, do you realistically have time for, if it's going to take an hour, if it's going to take, like if you have interviews coming in, you have to pull in footage or audio. So just map that out. But once I got the flow of like our first few episodes, it's so easy. Now it takes less than a half hour to edit because everything is already, formatted.
Got you.
So it takes a lot. Like Kia said, allow a couple months to really get everything in place and have some episodes locked in. Like I think we had maybe 4 weeks of episodes filmed and edited before we went live. That way we started out ahead.
Yes. And I knew someone else that just started a podcast. And he actually interviewed me and he was doing the same thing. He had, I think he said 5 or 6 pre-recorded episodes before launching. That, I promise you, audience, is going to help you because even with our 4 pre-recorded episodes, we still got a little bit behind. And, I like that you mentioned the dedication and consistency because if you really want to do this podcast and once you decide on your structure, are you going to be a weekly podcast? So you really have to think about the time, your recording time, your editing time, and when are you going to have all that done before the launch date? And just knowing that so many things happen, us running a business, we're both moms, we both work our 9-to-5 jobs. So some of our recording times was just like, I'm exhausted. Can we reschedule? And the second you reschedule, and I'm guilty because I've done it, we've both done it. But the second you reschedule, it pushes everything back. And now you got to try to, because our recording date was Saturdays to record. And so then you guys hear the episodes on a Wednesday. It's not a live recording, which I don't think any podcasts are live unless it's like that's a YouTube or it's all pre-recorded, but life happens, right? You might get up on a Saturday and be sick. And then it's like, crap, then when can we film again? So do your preparation and all of that. But also remember that like things are going to happen. The schedule might get off. Just do as best as you can. I think, to be honest, this entire season, I feel like we've missed maybe 1 or 2 Wednesdays when there was supposed to be an episode there and there wasn't. Just because we couldn't get in the record date. So,
but we did good. I mean, February through June of consistent weekly podcasts, missing just like 2. Like that's good for your first ever podcast. And then like, I just honestly, I have to pat us on the back because we're still growing this activewear brand. Like it's not a multi-million-dollar brand yet. Like we're still a small business. It's a lot of work for just 2 people. We were already in over our heads with just Glamourina Activewear, right?
Right. And we added more on our plate.
We added more, but it's going to pay off. It's going to pay off. I mean, we added the sister circle. We're trying to do so many things, but it's more like planting seeds for the future. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I like that. It's definitely planting seeds. And so again, whether you're just starting just the podcast or you already have a brand, and you wanted to do more with your brand. So you decide, I'm going to do a podcast so people can see kind of the face of the brand and my voice. Yeah. I mean, go for it. It is a lot of work. It is extra. It's more work. I don't want to say it's a lot. It's just, it is several things to add if you already are a business owner. However, I've enjoyed the conversations too. It's a difference. Podcasting is such a different atmosphere and vibe than the running of the business. Obviously, this is our time to kind of relax and chat about stuff that's happening, chat about, we've talked about so many different topics, and we'll go into that a little, about our hair and colorism and just so many different things that affect us as Black women. So sometimes I felt like after we've had our conversation on this podcast, I feel good. I feel like, I got an opportunity to give my opinion about something that's bothering me or that people are talking about on social media.
It's like a release a little bit. And I think honestly, doing the podcast kind of has brought us a little closer.
Yeah.
Because we really didn't talk, like if it wasn't business, to be honest, we don't really talk about a lot of personal stuff.
Yes.
I'm glad we did this. I feel like it has brought us closer. We get to learn a little bit more on a personal level about, thoughts, opinions, experiences. So I think that was another good thing.
I do too. I think us getting to know each other, and it's the same as I feel like our audience getting to know us, So anyone that has been listening, if you've known of Glamourina beforehand, you may have heard us on an interview or a pop-up shop or what have you, but not like in-depth conversations like this. So hopefully our audience and followers get to know us a little bit, and just kind of see like where our head is at, in certain topics. So, just to kind of round out again, some of the suggestions on how to start your podcast. One other thing is the marketing. And I did mention that a little bit in terms of marketing and how everything should flow. So whatever your branding is for your podcast, wherever you're marketing, social media, obviously, you got to make sure that everything is cohesive and use the platforms. I mean, share and tell people about your podcast when it's ready and you are ready to launch that first episode. You want to spread the word, share it to the world, put it on your social media, create your own social media page, maybe just for the podcast, if you want it to be separate from your personal. But if you have emails, you have friends and family, if you already run a business and you have an email list. So definitely you want to promote your podcast and get viewers and get listeners to tune in. So that's an important step.
And I think marketing for a lot of businesses, I know entrepreneurs who are like, how are you marketing your product? It's hard. It's not easy. I mean, we're already trying to market one product. Now we got to market something else. So I would say we really haven't done the best job with marketing the podcast just because there's so much to do. But it's always a learning experience. So like, just keep at it, get better over time. It's okay if you start off a little rocky. This season we did okay. Next season we'll do better. So just kind of have that mentality, like know what you have to do, but also don't beat yourself up too bad if you didn't post. Like I was supposed to be responsible for posting the, clips for our social media. I fell off a lot because I'm trying to market this Juneteenth sale, or I'm trying to. So it's a lot, but don't beat yourself up too bad. Just work hard, be consistent, and it'll get it'll get the reach that it's supposed to get eventually.
Definitely. And I like with the marketing to find creative ways to market. So, we had start posting clips of the episodes, sound bites, let people know, like, what are you talking about? If they can hear you on a certain topic, especially something that might be funny or jarring or, that's just interesting, show that clip. In your marketing, in your posting, so that people can kind of hear a little bit of the episode, like share a little bit. And then again, just any other creative ways that you might be able to find, include in your marketing techniques. Definitely do that.
For sure. So now let's get into like some of the top episodes of the season. So I actually pulled from Spotify analytics and then from YouTube. So there's two different audiences I realized. So we can talk a little bit about, recap. But for Spotify, number one episode was the pros and cons of dating an older man. And so
I love it.
We had so many views from this one, the most views of the season. And I think maybe it's because our age range, I think our age range on Spotify is like 35 to 45. So those are the group of people and it was actually mostly men. But I think at that age in life, people are looking for their partner, or maybe the men were trying to get some insight on what younger women think. I don't know. But I just found that interesting so the dating topic was number one. So we could think about that maybe for season 2. Number 2 out of, top 3 was embracing equity, where we kind of talked about the Women's Day theme and just how do we get equity as entrepreneurs, as Black women entrepreneurs. So a lot of people were interested in that. And then number 3, how we started a successful activewear brand. So there are people interested in like the journey of the story of entrepreneurship.
Right.
Those were the top 3 from Spotify. And
I like that we're mentioning this because this is just another part in terms of thinking about, your podcast. And if you are starting a podcast but don't have a brand already, because that's separate. If you have a brand or a business, some of these things will come naturally. You already know about analytics.
Right.
But if you don't have a business or anything like that, which is fine, and you're just starting your podcast, understand that your platforms will give you information about your audience, who's listening, how many viewers, all of that. And that's important. You need to take your analytics information. Once you're done, with your first few episodes, take a look to see like what people are listening to. So Nicole just mentioned the analytics for Spotify, and that there's 2 different audience, Spotify and YouTube, but definitely look at the information because it will guide you in terms of what kinds of topics. So we know our Spotify listeners like conversations about dating, which means it will help us for our next season to possibly have a little bit more conversations, maybe some other people, maybe some men in our interviews in terms of the dating. So that will help you, that will help us. So definitely look at your numbers, look at your analytics.
For sure. And so then when it comes to YouTube, so YouTube is a different world. There's a lot of trolls on YouTube. But so the top episode on YouTube was colorism among the Black community. That was the number 1 with views on YouTube, a lot of comments. People were very
triggered,
very triggered. Just they had something to say. So there's a lot of comments. You guys can go to our YouTube channel, Glamourina TV, and just kind of check out those. Right under that was the episode we did about Ebony K. Williams and her comments about dating a bus driver. That was a big trend. So that was number 2. And then last, number 3 was code switching at work as Black women. So I think on YouTube, a lot of the stuff about race and even the reparations episode was interesting. You guys can go read the comments. I don't want to get too deep into it, but there's a lot of people who are not of African-American descent who have a lot to say. And so the YouTube community kind of has no filter. They're a little uncouth, if you ask me. So just go check out our channel. And it just seems like the race thing is a big conversation when it comes to the YouTube audience.
Yeah. And I try to, analyze all of our different topics. We definitely did discuss race a lot. And I think it's just because this is our life, right? I mean, we're Black women. We both were working in predominantly whites, occupations, our job settings. And so the experience, the code switching, the colorism, which is in our own community. I mean, we really use this podcast to just discuss a lot of the topics that we're dealing in our everyday life. And so being a Black woman is every day. And that's something that you face on a daily basis. So I love those conversations, race. And I think, like you mentioned in terms of comments, when you are starting your podcast or really whatever you're starting, you do have to know there's going to be naysayers and people that have negative things to say. I mean, I learned that the hard way, even when we first started our business. I always say in our interviews, so humble to see, people wearing Glamourina and supporting us. But people, we don't really post about it or talk about it, but we've had people, will either say something about the clothes, they don't like it. I mean, I remember we had a customer who was just like, this was not the color and it looks like poop or something. I mean, I don't remember that. Something. Yeah, she mentioned something about the brown.
Okay.
One of our pieces from our melanin collection. And that's okay. Like, I'm saying all this to say that you have to kind of develop a thick skin because you have to understand that not everyone's going to love everything you do. So whether it's clothing, whether it's a service, whether it's your podcast, some people aren't even going to watch. Like you said, our YouTube community is different. I feel like sometimes people don't watch or listen to everything, and they maybe just hear a little or just see us, because we had a comment saying like, those two aren't darker skin. Like, what are they talking about?
I was going to mention that too. Yeah.
And it's like, you didn't listen to the episode. We're talking about colorism, because colorism expands between whether you're light skin or dark skin. Colorism exists for all of us. So just know, again, when you're looking at your analytics and you're looking at the comments, I think it's important to probably read the comments, because you want to get feedback to hear what people have to say, but don't take it personal, guys. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and they're allowed to give it.
They are. And then on top of that, I mean, a lot of times when I see the negative comments or the super opinionated comments, I'm just like, well, at least you found us. You listened to us. Like you took the time out of your day. So yeah, I don't really look at it as a bad thing. And like you said, like, we've been in this business realm for like 7+ years at this point. We've encountered different things, and I think we've both developed a tougher skin in business in general. So a lot of the stuff doesn't faze me. Even with if people don't like the designs of the clothes, more people like it than don't. You know what I mean? So it's focus on the positive and not the negative.
True.
But yeah, so this is the last episode of this season. I mean, I think we've done so good at just managing life doing this.
I think so too. Like we mentioned earlier, because we already had a brand, and a fairly successful brand, our brand is just growing. All of the elements and pieces that go into running the business, as well as working and being moms. I mean, you have to find a quiet space for your podcast. Imagine like you and I both have one child each. We can understand if you got 2 or 3 and they outside, it's like, oh my gosh, which would, by the way, is why the headphones and stuff help, because it does help kind of drown out some of the background noise. Yeah. But yeah, it's been tough. I always joke that people say, how do you guys balance it all? And I think that we're just doing a good job. There's no like perfect plan. But we prepared as much as we could. We really tried to draw out and map out, the episodes. We had a script also. So that way you don't just hop on and you just start talking, because I will start rambling. So we definitely have a script. We decided like how long this podcast was going to be. Yep. And even, timing ourselves so that, again, it doesn't just run on. So I think that it is possible. We have proven that it's possible to do all the things that we said we do, plus add on a podcast. So if you're interested in starting a podcast, go do it. I was nervous at first. I didn't know anything about the podcast world. I listened to a few podcasts here and there, but then I started looking at all the equipment and all, and I got nervous, but we took our time to prepare and plan. And then after that, things just flow smoothly for the most part. Again, life's going to happen. You might miss your recording date, but if you can try to stay as consistent, because what you don't want is to create an audience and get a following, and then you fall off. You didn't record an episode, and then 3 weeks later, and then another. Like, that's not consistent, guys.
That's not the right way to success. Just push through. And like Kia said, she was nervous. She, was like, oh, I don't know which equipment. And I'm more of the person that's just like, go for it. Just do it. Yeah. We'll learn along the way. It doesn't have to, like, my video right now, if you're watching on YouTube, is super grainy. I don't know why, but it's okay. Like, it's raw. It's unfiltered. It's Behind Glamourina. Yes. And we will continue to learn and grow. Like 2 years from now, we might have a set with HD cameras, and you know what I mean? So it's okay. Studio. Just start. Yeah, a studio. So just start. And if you don't start, you won't have any analytics. You won't know how you can pivot, how you can do better if you don't ever start. It's like, it's now or never. So go ahead and do it. Don't let fear stand in the way. We're proof. We have all these other things going on, and we can still do it. So can you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode, this entire season of Behind Glamourina, Moms on a Mission. If you missed any episodes, check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Again, we have a passion for building sisterhood through wellness and creating a safe space where all women feel like they belong.
Yes. And thank you again. I know we already said this several times, but thank you guys for just tuning in, for listening, for following us along this journey. You know, we hope to just continue to grow, to get bigger and better. I feel like almost all of the episodes on my end, my video is pretty grainy. So hopefully, you know, next season, I'll be able to even just for my own personal goals, step it up a little bit, get better quality. I don't know if it's lighting. I don't know what it is, but we'll keep growing, keep getting better. And so will you. So if you have any questions, you guys can always email us at shopglamourina@gmail.com. You know, definitely comment on this video, check out our other episodes, and also be sure to visit glamourina.com to shop culturally inspired activewear that reminds you ladies that you are enough. Until our next season, stay well, tribe.